The storm raged on outside, casting an eerie glow over the makeshift shelter as it tossed the small group of survivors against the cold, wet wall. Rain lashed down on the makeshift roof, threatening to rip it loose at any moment. But no one dared move from the position they had huddled in for hours. They were all deathly silent, the only sound the relentless pounding of the rain against the metal sheet that creaked and groaned under the pressure. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the dark sky, and for a moment, it seemed as if the very heavens themselves were screaming at them. Then, just as quickly, the light was gone, plunging the group into darkness once more. The sound was stark, a harsh reminder of how fragile their fragile little world was. I was acutely aware of every creak of the tree branch supporting us, the only light, the reflection of water on the small shards of glass that lined the thin edge of the stormy window's frame. I waited it out, holding my breath under the surface of the water that pooled at my chest. These hands, they were my hands, I thought, as my fingers instinctively searched for comfort in the slight pulse that beat beneath my fingertips. But there was something else too, something I couldn't quite explain. It was a flutter at the bottom of my stomach, the same elusive uncertainty I carried inside of every decision. Something the others always seemed so sure of, but I couldn't shake, would ever sway their way. Before long, the lightning flashed once again, illuminating the cramped space, and the group slowly emerged from their respective corners of the shelter. Tension hung between us, like the tension in the static we heard on an old radio. My name is Maya. I had no memories of my life before I was a child, when a horrific incident left me with deep physical and psychological scars. All I knew was that my current existence was one of survival, a life that my group clung to with desperation. Here they were: Ryan, the quietly haunted ex-Marine, Samantha, an enigmatic young woman with a hidden past, and Aaron, the charismatic but increasingly nervous genius. Last time we discussed the events of our past, there was general disagreement over the details. I knew very little about them other than a faint recollection of a past existence where knowledge flowed freely between minds. These fragmented pieces were what we all had in common. What set our memories apart was our varied responses. "It's killing me," Aaron muttered in frustrated, strained tones, huddled in the corner with a makeshift blanket. "We need more details." Ryan and Samantha exchanged uneasy glances in response. They avoided the question they now seemed to be about to tackle, choosing instead to focus on nothing. A rain-washed sense of hopelessness clung desperately onto them all, an airtight bubble created around the group. Is this all possible? Or was there more to them than their present and unknown future? A faint whisper escaped Aaron's lips, barely audible above the relentless rain. "We can't keep living like this, playing guessing games with our past. We need answers." His words hung in the air like the question marks scattered across the wall, each one mirroring the uncertainty that seemed to be spreading among them like a slow-moving stain. Ryan's jaw clenched beneath his weathered skin as he shifted uncomfortably against the wall. He glanced at Aaron, his eyes narrowing in skepticism. You're not just looking for answers for yourself, Aaron. You're worried about what this says about us. Isn't that right? Aaron's gaze drifted away, his eyes focusing on the spot where the rainwater pooled on the ground. I'm not the only one, Ryan. We all are. We're trying to piece together the truth, but it's like we're missing pieces of a puzzle with no picture to match it to. Samantha's voice was soft, almost melancholic, but it held a depth that commanded attention. I think we're trying to move on from the past. We're trying to create a new future, one where we can leave our old lives behind. I regarded her warily, my thoughts echoing her words. Was this really what they wanted? To leave our past behind? I thought back to my earliest memories, the ones that hinted at a life beyond this one. I had always pushed them aside, refusing to acknowledge the truth. But now, with the others' memories slowly revealing themselves, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to our story than they let on. The creaking of the tree branch made me flinch, and I jerked my gaze to Ryan's, searching for any sign of understanding. He met my gaze, his eyes a mirror reflection of mine. For a moment, I thought I saw something there, something that hinted that he was aware of the same uncertainty that had settled in my chest. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by the cool mask he wore. You're not sure, are you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan's expression was a mask, a sheet of unyielding stone that I couldn't read. I'm sure of one thing, he said finally, his voice low and even. We need to keep moving forward. If we stay here, the others will see it too. They'll wonder if we're any different, and once they start doubting us, our whole world might just unravel. This bubble of despair began to crack, and the question hanging in the air became unavoidable. Samantha began to speak, her voice hesitant yet filled with a sense of urgency. I think we need to talk about the ship, she said, her gaze drifting toward the entrance of the shelter. We can't just sit here in the dark, wondering what's out there. Ryan's eyes narrowed, a hint of defensiveness flickering across his face. We talked about the ship, he reminded her, his tone even, but his words cloaked beneath a hint of irritation. We've been exploring it for hours. It's still void of anything. Samantha's response was measured. That's exactly what I'm saying. We can't just keep moving forward in the dark. We need to start piecing together our memories, Ryan. And I think we need to start with our past. I watched her words, my mind racing as I processed the implications. Her suggestion was not a new one, but I could see the tension within her, the hunger for answers that had grown over the past few days. My gaze darted to Aaron, who had been sensing my uncertainty as we continued to debate the question of our past. He rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand, the expression of resignation hanging heavy on his face. He was the one person who didn't seem to care about the ship or what secrets it might hold. In fact, his concerns were far removed from our situation. But Aaron's thoughts were heavy on my mind. I saw the concern reflected in his, the same emotions of frustration and desperation. The thought that might have sunk into those minds came from my perspective, but also included every single other worry that lay at hand. The thing about our past, I interjected, my voice barely above a whisper. is that I have this feeling, Aaron, even though I have no attachment to it. There's something very tangible, or perhaps just my own curiosity about it, that's growing within me. Almost like I had an inkling prior to being born. There was something, too, about Ryan's anger and the turmoil that lay beneath his surface. If we just keep moving forward, I said, I worry we might lose something, our only hope of getting out of here, of uncovering the secrets that bring us back. As the rain pounded down outside, the words hung in the air like secrets that made everyone shudder. Yet no one moved. One silence did dawn, and our shivering breaths hung faint before it was broken by the ground that groaned beneath our feet. Samantha, I breathed softly, my heart racing. It has to be a warning sign. I waited, my fingers dancing only over the glassy ripples at the bottom of the pool, softly enough as not to make a sound, my gaze following the ripples left by a sudden, brief touch. The group stood motionless, frozen in uncertainty, with Aaron's steady, fearful eyes locking onto mine. For an instant, I thought I saw a glimmer of something there, worry, perhaps, or something more. We need answers, Samantha said finally, her quiet firmness the only sense that guided me. But something was different this time, a hesitation that wasn't Aaron's nervousness or Samantha's cautious hope. Her gaze met mine. A faint flicker of a smile trickled across her lips. Something deeper coursed through me, something beyond my ability to decipher. Without warning, even, she began to pace. Maybe it's not about having answers, she continued, the air feeling thick, the storm pressing in around us like it wanted to suffocate us all. Maybe this isn't just about trying to fit together the pieces of who we are. Maybe there's something else altogether. A low rumble grew inside myself as I considered her words. What did they mean? Why would we give up when there were still questions to be asked? Of whom? Where? What was meant? It can't be, Aaron said sharply, as if caught by the emotion stirred. A quiet anger flashed at her, followed by a shift in his position, his eyes locking onto Samantha with an intensity that terrified. Ryan raised his hand to the roof. It jerked in slow, tense motion, the sound like fingernails scraping together. He swung his gaze. It slid over each face in the group. As if taking them all to task, his eyes, if anything, seemed even angrier. We can't just sit here, he snarled, standing as if summoned to the act by the mere force of the other's anger. But this anger had a purpose. As he spoke, his form seethed with power. It slowly hardened into an unwavering posture, so quiet only the storm raged on around him. His words stilled, the icy rain drumming up at his feet. The tension did. His right foot shifted forward, hovering as if over some specific and far-off line. There was power here, power controlled, and determined. My name is Maya. The storm raged on outside, casting an eerie glow over the makeshift shelter as it tossed the small group of survivors against the cold, wet wall. Rain lashed down on the makeshift roof, threatening to rip it loose at any moment. But no one dared move from the position they had huddled in for hours. They were all deathly silent, the only sound the relentless pounding of the rain against the metal sheet that creaked and groaned under the pressure. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the dark sky, and for a moment it seemed as if the very heavens themselves were screaming at them. Then, just as quickly, the light was gone, plunging the group into darkness once more. The sound was stark, a harsh reminder of how fragile their fragile little world was. I was acutely aware of every creak of the tree branch supporting us, the only light the reflection of water on the small shards of glass that lined the thin edge of the stormy window's frame. I waited it out, holding my breath under the surface of the water that pooled at my chest. These hands, they were my hands, I thought, as my fingers instinctively searched for comfort in the slight pulse that beat beneath my fingertips. But there was something else too, something I couldn't quite explain. It was a flutter at the bottom of my stomach, the same elusive uncertainty I carried inside of every decision. Something the others always seemed so sure of, but I couldn't shake, would ever sway their way. Before long, the lightning flashed once again, illuminating the cramped space, and the group slowly emerged from their respective corners of the shelter. Tension hung between us, like the tension in the static we heard on an old radio. "My name is Maya." Ryan was the first to speak, his husky voice barely audible above the howling wind. "We need to talk about what we found in the ruins." The others turned to him, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the lightning. Samantha shook her head, her dark hair fluttering in the wind. "We can't trust him," she whispered, her eyes fixed on Ryan's weathered face. Aaron cleared his throat, a faint light of curiosity sparking in his eyes. "How can you be sure?" I felt a shiver run down my spine as Samantha stepped forward. "I've been going over what we found," she said, her voice steady. "The symbols, the technology, it's all too much." Ryan stepped back, his eyes narrowing. "You can't just dismiss it, Sam. We need to explore this possibility." Samantha's face hardened. "I'm not dismissing it," she said. "I'm just saying we should be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with here." Aaron held up his hands, his eyes darting between Samantha and Ryan. "Okay, let's not fight about this," he said. "We need to focus on the task at hand." But the damage was done. Tensions had flared, and it took all my strength to keep my voice from rising. The storm raged on, a constant reminder of the fragility of our world and the divisions that threatened to tear us apart. I remembered the fragmented memories that once flooded my mind, an endless torrent of images and emotions, and I knew that I had a role to play in this. I had a connection to the group, a connection we all shared. Suddenly, Aaron spoke up. "We need to work together," he said, his voice laced with urgency. "We need to uncover the truth, no matter what it takes." Ryan and Samantha exchanged a wary glance, their trust with each other clearly frayed. I felt a flutter in my chest as I searched for my place in the group. And then I saw a glimmer of understanding in Aaron's eyes, a spark of recognition that made my heart skip a beat. For a moment, the storm receded, and the world came into focus. I saw the group for what it truly was, a fragile, makeshift family, clinging to each other in a world that had been devastated by fire, and I knew that I had a choice to make. I could continue to hold on to my doubts, my fears, and my uncertainties, or I could take one step forward and into the unknown. As the storm raged on around us, I knew which path I would choose. The tension was palpable as we huddled together, our eyes avoiding each other's in a game of unspoken truth. The rain continued to pound against the makeshift roof, a constant reminder of the fragility of our existence. I knew I wasn't alone in feeling this sense of unease, a creeping feeling that something wasn't quite right. Ryan finally spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk about what's going on, Maya. We can't keep running from our past like this." I nodded in agreement, though a spark of uncertainty still lingered. "What do you want to know, Ryan?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on with our memories?" He pressed, his eyes locked onto mine. I took a deep breath, letting the memories wash over me. "I've been getting flashes of my past," I said, my voice hesitant. "Flashes of knowledge flowing from mind to mind. It's like, have you ever experienced it like that?" Samantha's eyes snapped up from her spot on the floor, a look of surprise crossing her face. "What are you talking about, Maya?" she asked, her voice laced with confusion. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "I'm talking about the connections I've been feeling," I said, my voice steady. "A connection to us, to you all. It's like we're supposed to be connected on a deeper level." The room fell silent, our eyes locked onto each other in a game of understanding. Ryan's expression was guarded, Samantha's eyes were searching, and Aaron's face was twisted with a mix of emotions. Suddenly, the creaking of the makeshift roof gave way to a loud groan, and the metal sheet above us began to sag. The group's eyes snapped back to the reality of our situation, and we all turned to watch as the shelter began to collapse. Without hesitation, Ryan jumped up and sprinted towards the entrance, the others close on his heels. We emerged from the shelter just as it imploded behind us, leaving us gasping for air in the midst of the storm. As we stood there, our eyes locked onto the wreckage of our makeshift home, I felt a sense of certainty wash over me. We were no longer a group of survivors, we were a family. And I knew that we would have to face whatever the future held together. The storm raged on, but we stood tall, our eyes fixed on the horizon. We knew that the unknown lay ahead, and we were ready to face it. Aaron's words cut through the chaos. "Remember," he said, his voice firm, "the knowledge flows within us. We just have to tap into it." The young woman, Samantha, turned to him with a look of interest. "You think that's possible?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan shook his head. "I don't know," he said, "but one thing is for sure, we have to try." In that moment, we knew that we had to take a leap of faith. We couldn't keep running from our past, we had to face it head on. As we stood together, the storm raging around us, I knew that we were ready to take on whatever lay ahead. With newfound determination, we set off into the unknown, our hearts beating as one. Aaron rummaged through his pockets, producing a small piece of paper with some cryptic symbols. "This was left here," he said. "I think it might be a clue." As I took the paper from him, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. A glint of metal was embedded into the corner of the page. It was a microchip, and it was small enough to fit inside my palm. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Aaron's eyes widened in surprise. I have no idea, he said, but I think we're about to find out. And with that, our journey to uncover the truth about our past and the microchip took off. In the distance, the storm began to clear, revealing a breathtaking landscape. Towering mountains stretched as far as the eye could see, their peaks shrouded in a veil of mist. We're headed to the Nexus, Samantha said, her voice filled with a mix of awe and trepidation. The Nexus, Ryan repeated. What is it? It's the lost city, Samantha said. The place where all our memories come from. Our eyes locked onto each other, a sense of excitement mixed with trepidation. Then let's go, Aaron said, a grin spreading across his face. And with that, we stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As we vanished into the distance, the storm finally subsided, leaving behind a sense of hope and uncertainty. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and we were the only ones who could tip the scales. But one thing was certain, our journey was far from over. A faint glow began to emanate from the surrounding hills, casting an eerie light over the landscape. The air was filled with an unseen energy, and I could feel it coursing through my veins. And as we stood there, our eyes locked onto the horizon, I knew that our journey was only just beginning.